Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Google Merchant Center Mastery. So today we're going to be talking about not simply just enabling supplemental sources, but actually setting them up and kind of talking through some best practices and such. Just as a quick reminder, I did a video specifically on this, but it's so fast that I'll just tell you. If you happen to go into your data sources and you do not see this here, the supplemental sources, then you actually need to turn it on. It is not on by default. No idea why. Who designed that? What you have to do is you have to go to add-ons, and you turn on, let's see, I always forget. It's because it's already on. You turn on Advanced Data Source Management. So it'll be there in Discover. It'll be here somewhere. It'll say Advanced Data Source Management. You actually have to turn it on. Once you turn it on, then you'll be eligible to see supplemental sources and feed rules and attribute rules. So attribute rules right there. So how to actually create a supplemental source, and let's talk about that. So as a quick review of the way that sources or feeds work within Google, right? So you have different ways that you can send your product data to Merchant Center. You can send it through like the Content API. The API, I think now it's called Merchant API. You can use a feed platform like Feednomics, Data Feed Watch, GoData Feed, some of those others, and they process your product data. Like they take like the blob of product data and then they push it into the correct format. Some of them will actually like optimize for you. So some of them will like add in attributes that you're missing and all that stuff. It kind of depends on what you're paying for and all that. But then they'll upload that here. Or you can use a Google Sheet like I've done in mine, just because like I just have my one product that's kind of a test just for this channel. So one of the things when you are managing product data that I'm just a huge proponent of this is, as much as possible, change things in the primary source. So, and this is important. This is not just, finding something to talk about, because if you're thinking, hey, how can I use a supplemental source, Kirk? One of the first things I want to do is say, should you use a supplemental source? Or should you be changing your data at the source itself to keep your products as clean as possible, your product data? And the reason why that's so important is because when all of a sudden you have like 5 different things that could be impacting your data. Your content API is coming in, and then you have a supplemental source, and then maybe you have a feed rule that's impacting things, and then maybe someone is like editing individual product edits and all this stuff, right? Then when there's actually something wrong, and Google's doing automated stuff too. When something actually goes wrong, it can be really difficult to figure out, where that is coming from, the wrong data is, in order to fix it. So as much as possible, change things in your primary data source. Now, there are going to be times where we utilize supplemental sources. You can already see, I actually just did a video about promotions, and I talked through how to set up a promotion ID. Promotions are one of those times where sometimes like it's easier just to set it up as a supplemental data source. There are other times where, like, what I like to say is, if you don't have easy access to actually edit the original feed source itself, or if it's like complex for some reason, or those can be some of the ways, or like maybe changing your feed source is you talking to like a developer within your firm so that they can change the file that gets uploaded to the product data that gets sent, and that's just going to take a lot of time, and you need to make a quick change. That's where supplemental sources can really come in handy. So you might want to create custom labels. You might need to quick change prices on a bunch of things. We've used supplemental data sources, for instance, with price errors. If there's just some sort of issue and the feed's not pulling the correct pricing, but maybe there's even like pricing wrong in what they're sending, and we're trying to figure that out, to like immediately lift the suspension, we might hard code those in manually through a supplemental source. Tell Google, we fixed the problem. They check, they're like, yeah, you did. They'll lift the suspension, and then that gives us time to like dig in and actually figure out what the main issue is with the core source itself. And then later on, we'll fix that issue and then remove the supplemental source so it's not still, changing things. So that's just like some of the examples of how to use supplemental sources. One of the things I like to say, and then we'll get into the actual how-to, like how to actually step-by-step walk through do it. One of the things I like to say as well is do not, I've seen this, do not pull all of your product data in just a lump sum and create a supplemental source and then change some of those things. People have made that mistake, and part of that is because anything that is in your supplemental source is like basically hard coding that in after you send your data, your updated data through your main source. So let's say you're sending things through the Content API and you're like, hey, I need to change a few custom labels. Maybe you don't really think of it. You just download your entire feed, throw it in as a supplemental data source, and then change those custom labels. You're hard coding in all of the rest of that stuff in that data as well, in that feed. So just be aware of that. So let's do the step-by-step now. How do you actually create a supplemental source? Well, it's pretty easy. So go to add supplemental source. And here's again where you can actually add in supplemental data through like the API. Again, there's probably like some really complex use cases for some of this stuff. So a lot of what I do in my videos is talk through, this is the generic average brand is going to do XYZ, right? Most of the time, if you're going to set up an API connection for a supplemental source, just like change your core source with your API connection, right? But there might be some use cases for that. Or like you could upload a feed file, kind of like your main feed, and add that into a supplemental source. Again, like, I don't know if I've almost ever done that because we'll change our data source or we'll use Google Sheets. So typically, this to me is the best way. So you can either choose an existing spreadsheet to upload your items. You have to give it the permission and choose it and all that stuff. Or you can create a new spreadsheet, and that's what we'll do. We'll say they use template, and then just to give you insight, like if we know that our feed, let's say our feed processes once a day, although I'm a big fan of Content API because it's all the time, but if it processes once a day at like, let's say 12 a.m., I like to set my data source, my feed to process at 1 a.m. just to give it an hour. And then and then it reprocesses and then it has that correct data. So let's see. Let's go ahead now and create one. So we're going to go ahead and create this. We'll say use the template. We'll have to do the authorize thing. Take a sip of my espresso. And now here's the template, and it gives you all of this information. Helpful little things about these. That's kind of cool. Typically, what I like doing, I typically like saying delete and then starting over. You'll have to watch for these sort of things as well. And so what I'm a big fan of, like, clean data. And so what I like to do, you don't have to do this. I'm just telling you here. I'm such a big fan of, like, cleanliness. Cleanliness and simplicity are next to godliness because it actually helps you know what the heck is going on. So when it comes time to supplemental source, again, the only thing you want to change is the attribute that you actually want to change. Sorry, the only thing you want to have in your source, your supplemental source, is the attribute that you actually want to change. So one thing that we will do at times, by the way, and this can be kind of handy. You know what? Let me go ahead. Well, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So sorry, let me duplicate this because I want to show you. Want to not go through there. So one of the things you can do is get your products either through your main source. Here is a little different because I actually have my spreadsheet already, so I could just go to my spreadsheet and copy and paste that. But maybe you have if you're using, let's say, an app with Shopify, get all of those. You can download that entire thing. And one of the things that I like doing is downloading the entire thing, just grabbing the ID column and then slapping that in here and copy and paste. That way you always have all your product IDs. So then in the future, you can just find the correct product ID. You can do that, or you can just keep your supplemental source to only those product IDs. We're going to make up some. It's probably going to look more like this if you're using Shopify, like that, right? By the way, very important thing to note is, unless Google has changed this in Next, I'm not aware that they have, this is case sensitive. So if you've ever tried to use a data source, a supplemental source, and it's not connected your products, because we'll show you what that looks like when you actually run it. It'll say, hey, these products did not match. If you're using Shopify, check this little stupid thing, because what happens in the past is you would copy and paste. I think I would copy and paste this from the Google Ads reporting section, and it would come in, it would paste as a small US, but it has to be a capital US in order for it to match properly to your feed, which was kind of one of those funny things. Like Google was the one providing the data, and Google was the one that couldn't read the data. Anyways, I digress. So so you have your IDs of the products you want to change, and then you would get the attribute of what you want to change. So let's do this. Let's say we want to add in a custom label 0 because we have promotions on some products. Can I it does change them. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Just for the sake, let's just make this nice and clean and fun looking. Okay. So let's say that this is going to be custom labels supplemental feed. I refuse to call it a source. This is a feed. Merchant Center Mastery. So then I know in my Google Drive, folder what this is at a glance. So let's just say I have all of my fake products in here, and Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming up. We have a BFCM deal running, BFCM 25% off, but it's only on 4 products. So here's where a supplemental feed comes in handy. You could use feed rules or attribute rules if you wanted, if it was something like super simple. So, and I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but let's say I was like brand, and I want to, let's say condition, type or select. So let's say I'm like brand, if it matches Nike, add value of Nike, then I want to set to, so this is, I'm sorry. That should be custom label. I should not be just doing this off the cuff without thinking, but just for the sake, you're going to get a bonus. So custom label 0, I could say I want to do brand set Nike, or you could pick it if you wanted. So if Nike matches the brand, then I want it to set this custom label to BFCM 25. All right. So, I mean, this is a real rough way, but that's where you might use an attribute rule, because you're just saying, hey, if all Nike products are at 25% discount, I'm just going to use this attribute rule. Supplemental sources, I don't always love using those, by the way, attribute rules, because to be honest, people forget about attribute rules and that they're impacting the data more than you think. So one of the things I like about supplemental source is it's kind of like in your face, and you can see it all here. So so you might, for Nike, just want to do that anyways. By the way, if you're thinking, well, hey, what if we had the brand of all of these products in there? So then we could do a quick, we could do a quick filter for Nike and then quick add in the custom label only to Nike. You can do that, but again, let me just go back to saying, and this probably is okay in this instance, but just be aware that anything you put into this supplemental source is going to override whatever you have. So if ever you want to change anything in the future, this will always override it, and you might not be aware of that. So just be careful of using other attributes in order to create like a custom rule, let's say, because you're hard coding it into your supplemental source. Okay, so let's say, so one of the things I'll do is, like if we are creating that, I might still do that. I might import the IDs and the brand and all that, create my custom label, and then I might remove like the brand column. So I might do that. But let's just say this. Let's just say it's these random products that are actually running this discount. And here's where supplemental sources are cool. So with attribute rules, you could just you can say all Nike products. Supplemental sources is where you can be a little bit more random, because you can tie it directly to that item ID for that source. And that's where it's kind of cool for discounts, let's say, because you could actually work with your client and determine what actually products where you have a lot in stock and you actually have the margin, and only run the sale on those products. and then only tie that promotion ID or the custom, let's say the custom label to those. We could do that with a promotion ID as well, by the way. And we might even just call it the same thing. That was actually the promotion. I did a how to set up promotions recently in Merchant Center, and I talk about this, the promotion ID. That ties it to the promotion within Merchant Center, but custom label allows you to actually tie it to campaign segmentation in Google Ads. And that's where it gets really cool, because you can say, hey, take these 4 products, set this promotion, and now I'm going to create a promotional, maybe a campaign, or maybe in PMax, maybe a promotional asset group that's only focused on custom label 0 products for BFCM 25. And that pulls in all of just those products. And you can even go in and add more later if you want to. And that's the nice thing about using custom labels with supplemental sources, is you can maintain the campaign segmentation for that custom label and then change around your products in that supplemental source, and your campaign will still keep targeting the same thing correctly. So let's just say, so we have our supplemental feed. Let's go ahead and we're going to tie it. Now with supplemental source, you have to tie it to an actual primary data source, because you're telling Google, here's the data, here's what I want to overwrite. Here's the data I want to overwrite, this primary source. So we're going to go ahead and create this. And I like to rename it just so it's very obvious, custom labels. So what I might do is have a custom labels product source like that, because then I can go in and I could do custom label, 1. And even if I don't have anything in, it's ready, right? So then maybe I want to do like, maybe you're tracking like product price or something, and you're like, hey, this is all products $10 to $50 in cost. And so you can like have that, which also allows you to do other things and blah, blah, blah. So all that to say, I often like having one supplemental source for like all of my custom labels, if you will. It's up to you. Some people like one supplemental source for like all of the information they're doing. I'm a fan of organization. I'm a fan of like quick looks, right? I like having my things in a box. So I like having a supplemental source custom label feed. I like having a supplemental source that's maybe like the promotion ID, right? So like some other uses. I'm trying to think. Like like you might run title tests. You can throw those in here, and you can make a title test. But also, again, like the more information you're getting here, the more complex it starts to get. So I like having a specific supplemental source that we have as a title test. There's another reason for this too, by the way, that I'll get to. I'll get to that. So let's finish this though. Let's do one thing at a time. We're already doing multiple things at a time. So this let's see. So this is our supplemental source. We named it correctly. Whoops, I'm sorry. I was going to say it was looking confusing, but yeah, that's because I went to the wrong tab. Okay, we're back to the actual supplemental source. So then once you get it, go ahead and update. And Google's going to be like, what? Things aren't working here. And I want to check one other thing. Yeah. So, yeah. So your products are updated. Nothing's matching. And that's because, so 0 match products. And again, that's because I don't have any actual product IDs in my actual feed that are that. This is just an example, right? So you do need to make sure you update it. That can kind of trip you up sometimes if you create it and then don't actually push the update button. So then now if we go here, we should be able to see, so there's still our primary source. Here's our supplemental source. Okay, now here's another thing. So I told you earlier why I like having multiple of these. So another reason I like doing that, not just organization, another reason I like doing that is because I'm not a fan of deleting supplemental sources. Because you may need to revert in the future, whatever. So what you do is you disassociate that from your data source feed, so you can still keep that around and reattach it, but it's not impacting, it's not influencing the primary data source. Here's how you do that. You don't do that in the supplemental source. You do that in the feed rules. You do that in the feed rules of your primary source. So attribute rules. So check this out. All attributes take from. What we're going to do is say, you know what? We don't want to take from the promotion ID one anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and save that as a draft. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the changes because I don't care about testing in this one. It's simple. And now check this out. We're going to go to our supplemental sources, and you're going to see, oh, you know what? It takes a minute. I remember. Yeah, there it is. Cool. So do you see this? This says none now. It used to say product sources, which is that's my primary source. So now it's not, now this supplemental source is not impacting any data. It's not influencing any data, but you can leave it around just in case you need it. That very much comes in handy if you have some sort of big feed overview, like you have some big mass bulk emergency update you need to do to prevent something from getting a suspension, whatever. And you don't want to like totally delete that, but you want to just remove it once it's done. You want to keep it around in case you need to, let's say, push it live again. Just remove it from that original source and you're fine. It's not influencing your data anymore. So there you go. That's kind of the walkthrough. That hopefully tells you, at least gives you a bunch of information in order to set up supplemental sources and actually why they're valuable and how to use them. Let me know if you have any questions, but I hope that was valuable for you. So thank you.